You are making the world a better place by listening to the Joy of Living podcast. This is your guide to achieving a more purposeful, powerful, and positive life. Join Barry Shore in unlocking the best version of you and becoming happier, healthier, and wealthier. And now, here's your ambassador of joy, Barry Shore.
Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking, so always looking for and finding the good. We have good in abundance today. In one of the most requested people, please have him come back again and again, that money guy, Peter Nolan. We'll be talking with him in a few minutes, and we're going to, he's going to wax eloquent about the economy and the world. And it may not be so eloquent. Well, it'll be eloquent. It may not be so elegant because we're going to talk about what's going on in the world. And it's a trying time. But we'll get there in just a few minutes. Now, the reason you tuned in to the Joy of Living with your humble host, Barry Shore, is because you know that in this show, we speak about the most important person in your life, which is you. Y-O-U, because when you become the best you make the world a better place. You build more bridges of harmony, you create more joy, happiness, peace, and love in the world. So you want to become the best you possible. That means that you want to be able to become happier, healthier, and wealthier. And that's what we discuss on the show, because we do use the three fundamentals of life. And when you work with these three fundamentals, the result will be you'll be happier, healthier, and wealthier, especially after today's show. And the three fundamentals, of course, are number one, life. Your life has purpose. And when you lead a purpose-driven life, number two happens. Now, in this case, a good number two, you go mad. MAD stands for make a difference. And the third fundamental is to unlock the power and the secrets of everyday words and terms. Simple example. Right now, our show is being carried worldwide, and we're touching over 348,000 people around the world who consciously and conscientiously tune into the show because they know they love that information here and they love that it transforms their life. Information is readily available. Transformation is very rare, and that's what happens on this show. So you're being joined by hundreds of thousands of people around the world on this magnificent, magical, mystical platform called the internet. If you ask anybody, what does www stand for? Invariably, they'll tell you it has to do with the internet. And factually speaking, they're correct. But in our world, the world of the positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, www stands for what a wonderful world. And what is a word, right? W-H-A-T-A. And a big tip of the hat to Satchmo Louis Armstrong for enabling that song, What a Wonderful World, to go viral and touch not just tens of millions or hundreds of millions, but billions of people around the planet. The moment you hear the opening bars of that song, what do? You can't help it. Right away, you smile. Now, smile is one of the most important words you can internalize, utilize, and leverage in your life, because smile stands for seeing miracles in life every day. Seeing miracles in life every day. Now, right now, I'm speaking to people again on naturel. Now, that means I'm clothed, but I'm speaking to real people, and they're not wearing masks. The masquerade is over. We're hugging, we're discussing, and going forth and allowing people to really feel their best selves. Recently, I spoke to 1,176 people in the audience, and people are raising their hands when I talk to you about seeing miracles in life every day. People say, hey, Barry Shore, I've been up for hours, I haven't seen any miracles. And I asked them, are you here? Can you hear? Can you stand still? I can't do that. Can you walk? I could barely do that. Do you have water, drink, food to eat, a place to sleep, family, friends? Every single one of those is a miracle. Now, what's the proof? Simplest proof. 1 million people didn't get out of bed this morning. You know why? They died. By definition, if you're watching or you're listening, you didn't. You have an obligation to live life to the full, live exuberantly. And you're going to be hearing ways to do that from our amazing guest, Peter Nolan, talking about the economy and such. So buckle up, because this is real stuff and it's going to affect you. It's going to make a difference in your life. Now, of course, I'll tell you a quick story about Barry Shore. Most of the people listening know, but you're always 20, 30, 40,000 new people coming, and we thank you for that. Imagine standing up in the morning, hale and hearty, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and that evening be in the hospital totally, completely paralyzed. That was me. Not an automobile accident, not a spinal injury, a rare disease which I never heard of the day before, took over my body and rendered me what's called a quadriplegic. Nothing in my body moved, my neck down. I can only communicate by blinking my eyes. I was 144 days in the hospital. I was in a hospital bed in my own home for 2 years. I couldn't turn over by myself. I was in a wheelchair for 4 years. I had braces on both my legs, my hips to my ankles. That was progress. Thank God today I'm able to be vertical and ambulatory with the help of a 7-foot walking wand. So I'm a triped, not a biped. I still can't walk up a stair by myself. I can't walk up a curb by myself. I help 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. But you hear my voice. Positive, purposeful, powerful, and pleasant, all because of one word. Smile. Seeing miracles in life every day. But I got to tell you a quick story. A few weeks ago, my 8-year-old niece comes over to me and says, Uncle Barry, can we still smile? S-M-I-E-L. I thought about it. Smile, sounds the same. Why not? I asked her how come. She says, because then it would stand for seeing miracles in everyday life. Well, out of the mouth of babes. But what was she doing? She was creating the kind of world she wants to live in. Now, create stands for causing rethinking, enabling all to excel, rethinking. Now, this is really important because you need to start rethinking what you've been doing when it comes to your life, your finances, and the world around you. It's really important, especially now. We're entering a very difficult period. So I'm going to give you 6 words that when you internalize these words, it will help you to shift your perspective. I got to tell you, dealing with thousands and thousands of people, most of the time people drop the F and shift and the other stuff happen. You want to shift your perspective. Keep your F and Fs in place. These are the 6 most important words you want to learn. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. Choice, not chance, determines your destiny. How you choose to respond in any given situation will make all the difference in your destiny in your life, especially in your financial life. Now, before we bring on Peter, I'm going to urge everybody to learn to use the 2 most important and most powerful words in the English language 3 times a day from now and forever. It will help you, your family, and your friends, and all living beings. And these 2 words are thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank stands for to harmonize and network kindness. The Dalai Lama has been quoted as saying, read in his writing, be kind whenever possible. And he says it's always possible. Imagine you walk in the coffee shop and you order your fancy latte. You sit down, somebody brings it to you, say thank you. You go to the coffee shop, you order a fancy latte. And a couple minutes go by, nobody brings it to you. You go to the counter and say, I'm sorry, we forgot. Oh, we'll bring it. And sit down. A couple of minutes go by, somebody brings it. You still say thank you. You're walking out of the coffee shops and it's raining out. Somebody holds the door open for you. You say, thank you. You're walking out of the coffee shop. It's raining out and somebody slams the door on you. You say, thank you. You're in traffic. You're late for an appointment. Somebody cuts you off. You say, thank you. You get up in the middle of the night and you stub your toe and it hurts. You say, thank you. To harmonize and network kindness. Now, kindness is a wonderful acronym. It stands for keep inspiring noble deeds. Now, there are very few people that I can ever introduce you to that inspire noble deeds more than my dear friend and colleague, amazing, wonderful Peter Nolan. Peter, we can't hear you. Ready? Do it again.
How about now?
Yeah.
Happy Yom Kippur, right?
Yes. Well, it is coming up in just a few minutes, and I'm glad we made time to do this. So thank you for that, Peter. I am going to tell people 3 things. Number 1, for the hundreds of thousands of people listen, you're responsible for why Peter's here, because he is the most asked for guest on the podcast. I have gotten hundreds of emails saying, hey, can you have that guy who speaks about money come back? It's called Nolan on the Economy. And I'm happy to say that I think this is our 4th, maybe even 5th show that we've done together, Peter, over the course of the past 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And it is eerie, and I don't mean Lake Erie, but it's eerie in the ability that you've had in our discussions to talk about trends and the future. And I'm going to say up front, Peter Nolan is not a prognosticator, or at least not a professional one. And yes, you can look up prognosticator for those who don't know what it is. And he's also not in the business of making predictions about the economy. But what he is more important. He is an astute businessman who puts his own money where his mouth is. He's also a senior advisor for an important company in the Los Angeles area that manages almost 40 billion with a B in finances for various wealth funds and other people and such. And he is smart enough to know what he doesn't know and to learn and to listen. So the reason we have Peter on is because he's upbeat, very pleasant, has a cheery smile. He likes to wear sweaters in the fall, and he's a very handsome, gregarious young Irishman. So what better thing to do than have Peter speak about the economy? So Peter, I wanted to jump in and just have you talk about what's going on now, but I think what we should do is just lay out the fact that you were here with us, I think 3.5 months ago. I think it was back in June, and we're now in October of 2022. And it's important to put dates on these things at the moment, because I'm going to tell you the three things that Peter predicted at the time. I mean, he's not in the business of predictions. He doesn't do crystal balls. I mean, he might for something else, but he doesn't do crystal balls. But he wanted to remind him some of the things that we spoke about. So with your permission, Peter, may I remind you of the three major things that you did mention, each of which has come true?
Yeah.
Okay. So number one, he used the P word when we were together last time. And the P word is pain. He said in the coming months, there will be great pain. Again, we're talking about the economy. And he's been spot on when it comes to that. He also used the next letter in the alphabet, which is the R word. And the R word is recession. And we'll talk about it in a little more depth, but he was just so spot on that recession was looming and it's over the edge. We're basically there, barring any cataclysmic upheaval, which actually might even make it worse. But so we use the P word, pain, talking about finances, use the R word, recession. And he also said another little phrase, I'm going to sanitize it, but he said people have their heads, I'll say in the sand, but he used an anatomical reference. So people have their heads up someplace where it doesn't allow you to become aware. He said people were just unaware or unwilling to become aware of what was happening. And just to peg something, at the time we spoke, inflation was up. It was over 8%. Petrol or gasoline prices in throughout the country were in the $4.50 range. I think in California now they're $6, and Peter lives in California. And the stock market was up around 35, maybe even 36,000. So we'll talk about that now. And with no more further ado from Barry Shore, because they don't want to hear me. They want to hear you, Nolan, on the economy. So have at it. Where do you want to begin, kid?
Where do you want to begin? Just tell me what you want to talk about.
Okay, let's start with pain. What do you see in terms of pain for the regular person, call them the consumer, the business person, people running businesses, no matter the size, and for the economy in general?
Yeah. It's interesting. There's an old Wall Street saying, I guess you didn't look at our podcast from February, because I think we predicted this in February as well. But when it was pre-invasion, I recall. But I'm not an economist. I'm not a market person. I'm just consider me as a business person that spent a fair amount of time in the financial world. The way I see things right now is I don't see an easy path out of the mess. I think if you look what happened, as a result of a lot of things, probably first and foremost, very aggressive stimulus by both the Federal Reserve, who kept rates artificially low during the pandemic, and during most of 2021. You had the government basically just throwing buckets of money out to people during the pandemic, and I'm not necessarily being critical of that, but that continues to today. And as a result of that, you had very simply too many dollars chasing too few goods. The economy was shut down as a result of the pandemic. Factories were closed. Factories overseas were closed. We had all the boats off the port, and they couldn't get goods into the stores. And as a result, the price of almost everything went up, and we had inflation. And so today, inflation is running over last year, somewhere in the 8+% range. That's the government official calculation of inflation. But if you look at inflation for things that matter to most consumers, it's even higher than that, because there's a lot of stuff in that number. And so we had inflation. We did have some wage growth, but the inflation is higher than the wage growth. So your dollars went less far. So you took, on average, everyone took a pay cut because everything that you had to buy became more expensive. And the rate of growth of inflation dramatically outpaced the rate of growth of wages. So the Federal Reserve, and I think we were critical of the Federal Reserve earlier in the year, the Federal Reserve finally got the joke. And it's interesting. Governments, and this is around the world. This is not unique to the United States, but governments became addicted to cheap interest rates, easy money, and also basically the Federal Reserve essentially increasing the money supply. And so there was a lot of what you would call policy money, where there was new bills and new taxes and new borrowings imposed to give people money. And it became for a while a free ride, that there was no cost. The politician was happy because the market was going up. People had plenty of liquidity. The Federal Reserve was happy because, the markets were stable and there wasn't inflation. And then all of a sudden, the bill has come due. And that's always been my concern is that these things you just can't fabricate economic growth out of thin air. You can inflate a currency. In other words, you can hand people more money by simply printing a currency, and that happens. You can borrow and give people money. You can do a lot of things, but eventually you have to pay the price. There's an old Wall Street saying, sell in May and go away. Meaning sell your holdings in May and go on vacation and don't worry about it, and then figure it out right around now, in the fall. But I guess what I see is I see continued pain, and I don't see an easy way out. If you look at, for example, real estate, right? Mortgage rates for the average family. I'm looking at the graph right now. Today in the United States, the average mortgage rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage was 6.85. 1 year ago, it was half that. It was less than half that. So mortgage rates have doubled. Most people, almost everyone, when they buy a home, they get a mortgage. And what that does is that has radically decreased their purchasing power. So you would then assume that real estate values need to fall. And real estate values have softened, but they haven't fallen enough yet to justify the mortgage rate. And a lot of people have floating rate mortgages. So their mortgage isn't fixed. They don't know what the rate's going to be when it resets. And that's going to stress consumers, right? Your biggest purchase is your house, then your car, And what you're seeing is that it's all driven by interest rates. So I'll stop for a moment. I think it's a very, very difficult place that we're in. And I honestly don't see an easy way out. At best, we will kind of muddle along. I don't see prices inflating much more than they have. So when the president was talking about inflation's only up a little, what he's talking about is month to month increase in rate. It's still, inflation's up a lot if you look at it over the year, but it is true that on a month to month basis, the rate of inflation, the growth, is relatively constant. I don't see prices going down a lot on most consumable items, but at the same time, you're going to see what the Federal Reserve has done will have its effect, and you'll see decreased consumer demand.
So let's unpack what you've given us, which is a very full plate. It's not an antipasto, it's a very full plate. I'm just going to bring out three pieces that you did mention. And thank you for talking about the fact that we did the podcast in February where we were even more prescient, actually. So we're talking about the Fed, and as you mentioned, this was not unique just the United States. Everybody was joining in on the party bandwagon throughout the world and inflating currency and doing that to the ultimate detriment of the consumer, who is based, by the way, the biggest driver of the American economy and therefore the world economy. Eventually that something has to take its toll, and taking the toll in the biggest area that you mentioned is which real estate. So I got a mortgage at 2.99. Now I knew it was a great rate at the time. That's because interest rates were at about zero, or 7.75. So it was more than the interest. Everybody, the banks were making money. Everybody was happy at 2.99. Well, in a year, less than a year, like you said, you're at 6.85 now, and that's a head scratcher, because how do you justify a price at 6.85? Obviously, the price of the real estate has to come down commensurate with what it used to look like as if it was 3%. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly that, but it has to be some manageable monthly payments. But what you're also saying is, you made a great statement, everyone took a pay cut because of inflation. Now, inflation is not going away anytime soon. And the idea of, in quotation marks, what you talk about in Wall Street also, and people talk about a soft landing, usually doesn't happen in life. It's more like a thud. And that thud could be very, very painful, because if prices come down too much, too fast, you have a deep recession like we had in, let's say, 2008. You can have a mild recession, but that's hoping, and hope is not a great strategy for life, right?
Right.
The other point is that I'd like you to address is that we have just, to me, my ears perked up when I heard this, and I don't want to go to one word. We just passed $31 trillion in debt in the United States. Now, that's a number that's beyond human calculation, $31 trillion. You can't get your hands around it. But what is the real difficulty with it is not so much the number, but the servicing of the debt, because it is a debt. And by definition, a debt, no matter, you can't get rid of student debt. That was just a political sham. That's going to be the courts will overturn that. But the point is, you can't get rid of national debt. You could, but you wipe out a country. But the interest payment on $31 trillion is approaching what they call the doom loop. And the doom loop means that we're going to pay so much in interest rates that it's more than what we take in, which of course is the ultimate destruction of an economy. Because when your currency is not sound, you don't have a country. So I'd like you, if you would, to address something very difficult, Peter, and that is the concept of debt, a large national debt, and how does that affect a business owner? Let's be blunt. You're a business owner. I know personally that you own several businesses. I mean, you put your money where your mouth is, and they're not small businesses, unless you're Warren Buffett. Okay, they may be smaller, but they're relatively large businesses for the normal human being, and you own several of them in very strategic industries like water and things that people need and want. So you're sort of protecting yourself against, it's like a hedge because you're in things that people need. But still, in all, you're going to be affected. You're a businessman. How do you see let's say, the national debt, the doom loop, potentially, hopefully not, and the great potential of a deep recession affecting your businesses?
Well, first off, I just want to say something. You said something that's absolutely right. The numbers are so large when you talk about the national debt that it's hard to comprehend. So most of us don't bother, right? Most of us we'll hear and go, wow, there's $30 billion of debt that the United States has. Who's going to pay that? And you go, wow, that's a bummer. And then you forget about it 10 minutes later because there's
Right.
literally nothing you're going to do about it. And because of how the political system works, no one gets reelected fixing the national debt problem. Right? That just doesn't happen. You get elected because you're going to give everyone, relief on their college loans, but they don't get elected by being fiscally responsible. But what you're seeing is that we do pay the price for that, and that's reflected in the interest rates. And you're absolutely right. And I saw the same article. It was an editorial in the Wall Street Journal this week talking about the doom loop, and it was a really fascinating article. I would advise your listeners to read. Just talking about the impact of increasing rates on the government. And what's happening is that this is happening in households and it's happening at businesses. So one of the things, businesses have been able to borrow, just like you've been able to borrow on your mortgage at historically extraordinarily low rates. And a lot of that is not fixed. And so all of a sudden, the amount of money that has to go out of the business to service debt is increasing. It just plain is. And that impacts the business. That hurts the business. And at the same time, you have softening consumer demand because the consumer's getting hit. The consumers battling inflation and interest rates at the same time. And so the consumer's getting squeezed and the business is getting squeezed. And that's why a lot of people, I've been saying that I thought we would be in a recession in the not too distant future. And I still maintain that we may already be in a recession now, because I think we're going to see softening consumer demand, softening business demand. Businesses are no different than a consumer. As their costs go up, their spending goes down. I was talking to some guys that run a financial institution, not a terribly big financial institution, but they were going to basically spend $15 million on a new office building, expanding a new office building. And they said, no, we just decided we're not going to do it. It's just forget it. And they have enough money to do it. It's just with everything that's going on in the economy, there's that psychological spiral you get into.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what's going to happen next, if things look, you talk about a soft landing, and we all hope that's what we have. And it's been really interesting because, history repeats itself, not precisely, right? I think Warren Buffett or someone said, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Right.
And in fact, we've seen this before, and I think the interesting thing is that this has been a very steady staircase down. We haven't had this crisis yet. Now, I think there are a lot of things that could trigger a crisis. What I worry about places like Credit Suisse, major multinational financial institution. If you look at, there's a thing called the credit default swap. Credit default.
Say it again.
Credit default swap, and what that
right.
is that's traded, and that's an insurance policy that you can buy to protect yourself in case a particular company's debt disintegrates because they go bankrupt. And so it's sort of like taking a company's blood pressure, right? If your blood pressure is supposed to be 120 over 75 or whatever it's supposed to be, and then all of a sudden you look at it and you go, wow, it's 220 over 100. That's not good. And so we're seeing that with an institution like Credit Suisse, and that's what happened with Lehman Brothers. If all of a sudden you have a major financial institution where people lose confidence, they can unwind very quickly. Now, I have zero idea what's going on with Credit Suisse, whether or not, I haven't studied their balance sheet, but you do see that their credit default swaps are trading at a steep premium even over 30 days ago. So, if you look at it, you have someone theoretically blew up Nord Stream 2. There's a lot of people that think the United States did it.
Wait a minute. Let me put you on pause on that amazing moment, because we have sponsors. Thank God, that still like to sponsor us. They pay money to be with us. We're going to put you on a brief hold. We'll be right back after this amazing insight that Peter is giving us into international politics. We're going to bubble up into the Baltic area, and we'll see what happens when we come back right from this brief message. Don't go away. There's more Nolan on the economy in just a couple of minutes. Buckle up. We'll be right back. Opportunity. What an opportunity. I'm going to use 2 4-letter words right now. Free gift. Free gift. Yes. You can have a copy of my best-selling book, The Joy of Living, How to Slay Stress and Be Happy, the ebook version, for absolutely free. All you have to do is send an email to me, Barry, Barry, at barryshore.com, and in the heading, the subject line, just write, free gift. It's as easy as that. This is a life-changing, life-enhancing opportunity. Barry at barryshore.com. You'll be glad you did. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Free gift. Do it now. Take the action. Make it happen right now. Best wishes. Bye. Imagine the kind of place you would want to shop for your favorite fur baby pet. HonestPets.co. Well, you found it. HonestPets.co. Not .com, .co. This is your go-to spot for the best, the cleanest pet treats that exist anywhere on the planet. All of the brands go through a rigorous review to make sure they meet the high standards of cleanliness, health benefits, and naturalness. This site was started by a husband and wife team, and it's veteran-owned, and that care about pets, especially dogs and cats, and coming soon, bird treats. These are very nice young people who really care about making a difference, because a portion of proceeds go to support veteran organizations with a focus on service dogs. This is the place where you want to go. You want to tell your friends. This has the finest, yummiest, freshest, all-natural treats and stuff for your fur baby. So go there, honestpets.co. honestpets.co. Do it now. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved immortal beings, and good good-looking people. Maybe you're good-looking because you're always looking for and finding the good. Well, we found good. His name is Peter Nolan. He's giving us great information, transformational information, which is going to cause your belt to be a little tightened. And get ready because he's giving us stuff that is should make your hair curl. He's talking about stress in a financial institution, one of the most famous ones in the world. He's talking about stress in the delivery of energy to Europe at the edge of the beginning of a winter time, and all the stress of war and such is happening around the world. So on that cheery note, Peter, so you left us with gas bubbling up in the Baltic Sea. Who knows who did what to this amazing thing called the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which basically supplies Europe with energy, or certainly Northern Europe, and is also one of the major reasons Mr. Putin can continue his war in Ukraine. And America doesn't like that. And what would that mean, God forbid, for continued war? Because war tends to mean higher prices, and you combine that with radical policies in the United States. God forbid the Democrats should stay in power after midterms. Okay, I'm exposing my political bias. But if they continue their radical policies about trying to undermine the use of fossil fuels, it doesn't spell bounty and benefit for an economy.
Yeah, well, I think that again, getting back to Nord Stream 2, you have Nord Stream 2. Either it was an accident, something happened, or something happened under the ocean we don't know about, or someone sabotaged it. And certainly, I would believe that a fair number of people in Russia believe the United States did it. I mean, I'm not saying I have any clue who did it, even if it was done by anyone. But I would bet if you polled the Russians, they think we did it. The Russians, I think, they're moving tactical nuclear weapons into Ukraine. It's an extraordinarily very, very troubling time. I hope, in general, my belief is probably nothing's going to happen. But if you look at history, people sort of stumble into war, and it's very rare that people just wake up and say, let's go to war. It's a series of reactions to unintended consequences. And so I'm very concerned. I think that on one hand, those things make me very concerned and relatively cautious about the future. The only thing I'll say on the other side is when I talk to people in the financial world, they say there's still quite a bit of liquidity on the sidelines. And liquidity on the sidelines hopefully means that the market can react and people can jump in if prices get low enough before it turns into some sort of a crash or some sort of a really troublesome correction, that they can jump in and deploy capital and help correct it. For example, talking about the political actions, look, the Congress passed and the president signed a Inflation Reduction Act, and there's virtually nothing in that bill that is really going to address inflation. It's 100% false advertising. The bill is, and I don't think the general public's that stupid. I think the politicians think the general public's that stupid, but I think people get it. I think they get the joke. And so, my hope is, for example, spending $400 billion to $700 billion on student loan forgiveness. My hope, honestly, is that doesn't happen, because again, that would just fuel further inflation.
So let's take a look at the great unwashed public. of which I am a member. What do we do? What can a regular human being do to either protect oneself or to make sure you can't make sure in a very uncertain world. It's an unsure world. So what 2 or 3 small incremental steps could a regular human being take to protect what they already have? Not so much expand what they're doing, to protect what they have.
Under certain circumstances, you can't.
Oh, wait a minute. I thought you were going to say that, but that hurts, doesn't it?
It does hurt. And that's, that gets into a spiral of confidence. But when you have a market like this, and there's basically external events that have happened and prices need to correct, I would say, what do you do is you make sure that you don't overextend yourself. Now's not the time to go crazy with debt. You should, not max out your credit card. Make sure you have liquidity. There will be investment opportunities. In general, if you look over the long run, the markets do correct. But who is the economist said in the truly long run, we're all dead anyways. So
that was very reassuring. I was hoping you weren't going to bring up that quote.
Right. But, I would say that now's the time. I would advise, generally caution, and be cautious. There will be buying opportunities. You will see, forced sellers of assets, whether it be a public marketplace or debt. But I would say for most of your listeners, I wouldn't advise that. You really have to be willing to tolerate a high degree of risk if you're going to play that game. And in general, is you don't want to make impulsive moves, right? You don't want to take all your money out of the stock market and put it in Bitcoin because you think it's uncorrelated, unless you really know what Bitcoin's value is. And I would argue that there's very few people on the planet that really know what the value of Bitcoin is. The United States, at the end of the day, the United States is populated by extraordinarily entrepreneurial individuals, extraordinarily talented individuals. And historically, we've had a political system that encouraged value creation through technology, through being entrepreneurial. A lot of things that the government just impulsively wants to do is to crush those instincts. But long term, I'm very, very optimistic about the nature of Americans and the American business community and the American investing community. People here, unlike other countries, people here want to figure out answers, and they want to figure out how to way to make it work. They want to figure out how to cure disease, and part of it is that they want to make a bunch of money. And for me, that's okay. If you can cure cancer, I don't care how wealthy you get. Some people in our political world do care, and they'd rather not have the cure for cancer because Barry's going to make a whole bunch of money by curing cancer. And that's not fair, or some sort of thing like that. So long term, I'm optimistic. I think we're going to have 2 years of yuck. And
by the way, that's a very technical Wall Street term that Peter just used. Yuck.
Yeah. But there will be opportunities. There's always opportunities.
Well, see, this is my next question. I have written down here specifically. We got stress. We got war. We got belt tightening by consumers, belt tightening by businesses. We have, what do you call it, 98% chance in some of these major research firms we're going to go into recession. But let's talk, and we have a strong dollar. I'd like you to address that. But let's talk about opportunity. Because
Right.
you gave a preamble that was so uplifting and wonderful. This country, unlike almost every country in the world, by the way, I mean, literally, there is no other place like the United States of America. We celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, which is what can we do to figure something out to make it faster, better, cheaper, make it work. That's the FBC is the essence of America. Faster, better, cheaper. So what do you see as opportunities, either in specificity or in a large picture?
And let me add one thing that people never talk about. Just I want to add on is the one thing the United States has, which most other countries don't, is they have enshrined protections of property rights. Because in other parts of the world, the government can say, you thought you own that, you really don't. And we have this brilliant judicial system, and we have the Constitution. So property rights are critical to operating a successful economy. And over the years in my career, we have invested in other countries, and we've gotten hit pretty badly because the government in another country decides, well, you made too much money, we're going to just take some arbitrarily. And I won't get into that, but what happens? I think it was Baron Rothschild had a saying, buy when the cannons are blaring and sell when the violins are playing. And so 2019, the violins were playing. Interest rates were low. Stock market was at a record. Unemployment was low. It was a pretty good time. It was about as good of a time as you're going to see. And today, the violins aren't playing the way they were in 2019. And of course, we went through COVID, and that's a whole different discussion. So what you'll see is situations where there's acute imbalances in the marketplace. And I would say for most investors, it's extremely difficult to play that. You really have to have incredible holding power, and you have to be willing to suffer short-term losses or even medium-term losses until things work out. And we see it now. For example, right now there's in the debt markets in the United States, there's a number of debt is especially less than investment grade debt is trading at increasingly close to distressed levels. And who knows, if we go through a real strong recession, maybe that's overpriced. And so you have to be willing to suffer through that. And I would say for most of your people, I would not recommend they do that. I recommend in general have a relatively conservative portfolio and just stick with it, and don't get too worked up about what the market does day to day, because there's not much you can do about it.
So, but let's take one of your dictums, which I think is very important. Pay down as much as you can on credit cards, because there you're paying 20% interest, which is crazy. In other words, use whatever money you have judiciously to put yourself in a position where you are capable at some point, whether it's 6 months, a year, 2 years, who knows how long, that you will be more liquid and more capable. I just saw also today's Wall Street Journal, there was in the back section of the business and finance, there's this interesting picture and an article and a quote, and says, turmoil in manufacturing, with this great subtitle. It says, the environment for manufacturers has gone from challenging to awful.
Well, what we've seen is that you have you have manufacturers and you have retailers, distributor, whether it's retail to the consumer or to businesses. And there's definitely what's going on right now is the balance of power during COVID shifted to manufacturers. Can I get enough fill in the blank? Can I get enough bicycles, or can I get enough face
Chip.
masks? Or,
How about chip for computers?
right, anything, right? And so what's happening now is the balance of power is going to shift to the retailers. And right now, this year, if you see, manufacturers are stuck with too much inventory, and so are the retailers. So near term, the retailers, their numbers may not look great, but over the long term, when you have inflating environment and excess supply, they're the ones that should win. But we'll see.
And on that high note, and that's why people love listening. There's a guy named the Oracle of Omaha. Well, we have Nolan on the economy, direct you from Manhattan Beach, and it's it's wonderful, Peter, to have you. We have always two questions to ask you, and I hope you'll answer both of them easily. Number one, will you come back again?
Only for you, Barry.
Thank you. And number two, I've asked you each time, and you've given the same answer, and I hope I'd probably be the same answer still, but I want to hear it. What is your most fervent desire?
I'm going to give you the same answer every time, Stephen. You need to come up with a new question. It's always the health and happiness of my family, and then of course, I extend it to the country, the health and happiness and safety of our country.
And by the way, I think that is really the sentiment, I'm believing this, of all Americans. And by the way, many people throughout the world want America to succeed because they recognize that we're the ship that can bring benefit to the world. We're the balance in the world. So yes, when Peter says it's for the health and happiness and well-being of his family, he's not limiting it, he's extending it. And that's what we do here on the Joy of Living podcast. That's why you tuned in, because you care the most in the entire world about you. And when you listen to Peter Nolan on the economy, and even Barry Shaw, you'll be happier, healthier, and wealthy because you follow the three fundamentals of life, which are: number one, your life has purpose. Number two, you lead a purpose-driven life, you go mad, you make a difference. And number three is you unlock the power and the secrets of everyday words and terms like WWW. What a wonderful world, no matter what's going on out there. And number two is to smile, seeing miracles in life every day. As my 8-year-old niece says, seeing miracles in everyday life. Create the kind of world you want to live in, just like Peter said, causing your rethinking. Don't get stuck in a rut. Causing rethinking, enabling all to excel. And learn to say thank you 3 times a day from now and for the rest of your life, because it will help you, your family, your friends, and the whole world. And we need it right now. Say thank you. Thanks stands for to harmonize and network kindness. Kindness stands for keep inspiring noble deeds. Peter Nolan, always a joy to be with you and to have you share your insights with our fabulous community. And with that, I'm going to give you a big hug in front of 368,000 people right now. 1, 2, 3. Our blessing from Peter and Barry is go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joy of Living podcast. Now that's another step towards your healthier, happier, and wealthier life. Never hesitate to do good in the world, no matter what the situation. Join us for another upbeat discussion next time at barryshore.com. And be sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show to get more conversations like this. And remember to share it with your family and friends too. See you on the next episode.